the Tigers with a big free agent signing. Left-handed pitcher Framber Valdez. Tigers sign him to a 3-year, $115 million deal. This guy was probably the last big free agent left on the market, especially for pitchers. Pretty much all the other big-name free agents have been snatched up. And it's not like the Tigers have been really linked to any of them either. Now, to an extent, Tigers weren't really linked to Valdez either, but the effective market for Valdez wasn't really as hot as some of the other guys, specifically the positional players. You know, your Kyle Tuckers, Bo Bichette. So it was kind of quiet on the Valdez front, but the Tigers able to sign him. Mentioned 3-year, $115 million deal, significant for a few reasons. Well, $38.3 million average annual value sets a new record not only for left-handed pitchers, but for Latin American pitchers, as Framber Valdez from the Dominican Republic. So, big-time deal. But when I saw this, I noticed here, includes an opt-out clause after the second season. And when I see anything with these opt-outs, my Boras senses are tingling. I'm like, ooh, short-term deal, high annual pay, opt-outs. This has Scott Boras written all over it. And I went to my friend at ChatGPT. I was not able to find, just searching through Google, Framber Valdez agent. But according to ChatGPT, when you ask who is the agent of Framber Valdez, it says that it is Scott Boras. And again, I wasn't able to really find any other link or anything that outright said this, but for all intents and purposes, let's go off of that. Scott Boras is the agent of Framber Valdez. And, I mean, it makes sense. High annual average, short-term deal, the opt-out. So the Tigers wheeling and dealing, making a deal with Scott Boras, but that leaves an elephant in the room. Tarik Skubal. By the way, arbitration decision coming today. You saw the record chasm between the two sides. The Tigers offering 19, Skubal wanting, $32 million in arbitration. So the arbitration hearing is today. We'll see what ends up happening with that. But, yeah, and that's the first thing I thought when I saw this, because Framber Valdez, specifically a left-handed pitcher. So, you know, you're paying a guy, you know, the record for a left-handed pitcher. It is a short-term deal, but, you know, it's like, hey, now you got to be, you know, thinking Skubal sitting there like, what? Where's my payday? Of course, I'm assuming that Scott Boras does not want any early negotiations going down right now. You know Scott Boras wants, that's what he's doing. He's pushing for the unrestricted free agency. And even if the Tigers have reached out to try to start some of these negotiations for a early extension, I'm just going to assume Scott Boras is probably not even going to let Skubal hear about it. Because, I mean, let's face it, that's what happened in arbitration. The Tigers' initial offer was $19 million. They expected that to be a starting point offer. You know, they expected to negotiate somewhere in the $24, $25 million range for Skubal in arbitration. But Scott Boras didn't even submit a counteroffer until the actual arbitration deadline. The Tigers didn't even see it. So kind of a underhanded tactic right there, below the belt maneuver by Boras. So it wouldn't surprise me if, again, this guy just doesn't want anything to do with early negotiations with Tarik Skubal. Wants this guy to hit unrestricted free agency to try to get maximum money possible. At the same time, that does carry a little bit of a risk with Tarik Skubal. What if he, you know, suffers a setback this season, especially like an injury setback? Boy, they're leaving lots of money on the table if that were to be the case. But at the same time, this could also be a little bit of insurance, if you will, for the Tigers. You know, you land a top-of-the-line left-handed pitcher for at least 2 years. Now, let's be honest, with that opt-out, that means if he has, not necessarily this first season, but specifically that second season, if he has a great second season, he's opting out and he's going to be a free agent again. But if he has a mid to awful second season, he's going to be opting in, and the Tigers are going to get 3 years from Framber Valdez. I mean, think specifically Jack Flaherty. You know, he had a player option, and of course he was not all that great. if you paid attention to Tigers baseball, not really that great last season. So, of course, saw that coming from a mile away. He was going to pick up that player option. So, I mean, overall, in the immediate short term, I do like this deal for the Tigers, even though you're dealing with Scott Boras. It's a short-term deal, and that's kind of my idea for Tarik Skubal and really any of these Scott Boras clients is you want that, you know, short-term deal with high annual average. You want to avoid that both high annual average and long-term contract because that's when you run into a Miguel Cabrera territory and you're paying this guy for long after he's able to contribute at that level, and the team just gets hamstrung during that entire time, really the back end of that contract. So, and at least it's 2 years before that opt-out. If it was like the Alex Bregman deal last season with the Red Sox where there's an opt-out after each the first and second seasons, I mean, that's a little bit too much player security, player guarantees right there. So at least the Tigers should be good to get, you know, hopefully 2 quality seasons from Framber Valdez. We'll see from there if he opts in or whatever. If he has 2 great seasons, he's probably going to be opting out again. But, I mean, at that point, he's 32 right now. He's going to be 34 at that point. I don't see why he wouldn't opt in, even if he has some good seasons. But I think there's just the bigger implications here is, you know, what does this mean for any future Tarik Skubal negotiations? I think everybody hopes that he sticks around. My only fear is that this guy's probably going to be as good as gone if it comes to unrestricted free agency, is the problem. But in the immediate term, Tigers looking good with their starting rotation, projected starting pitching staff of Tarik Skubal, Framber Valdez, Reese Olson, Casey Mize, and Jack Flaherty. And you got some other guys in there. Troy Melton, I think, established himself as a quality kind of option in there as well. And don't forget about Jackson Jobe. I don't expect this guy to be ready immediately in the season after he had Tommy John early into last season. But don't forget, that's another quality guy in your arsenal as well. So the Tigers starting pitching staff looks very deep. And especially with some of the relief pitchers, specifically Kenley Jansen, if he's able to continue playing at a high level, I think the Tigers, you know, maybe if they can have some better hitting this year, maybe some guys take a step up. I'm interested, you know, we'll see if Spencer Torkelson can have an improved season. Potentially Parker Meadows dealt with injuries last year. We'll see if he's able to kind of rediscover the form that he had the season prior. And don't forget, guys coming up through the pike, I expect Kevin McGonigal, one of the top prospects in Major League Baseball. I expect him to get called up at some point for the Tigers. I think this could be good. Again, it was a little worrying. I wasn't like too worried, like, oh, this is going to be a bad season. The Tigers have sat in their hands, haven't done anything this winter. I wasn't necessarily having that approach. It was a little worrisome, however, how quiet the Tigers were being in free agency, but I'm glad they were able to get this deal done. Apparently, Valdez's previous relationship with A.J. Hinch, of course, you know, earlier in his career, A.J. Hinch, that's when he was with Houston, and that was a big part of him signing this deal with Detroit. A.J. Hinch actually personally met with him to get this deal done. So, Framber Valdez, new Detroit Tiger.
If you missed today's installment of On the Docket, podcast it at foxsports1019.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to tune in live weekdays at noon on Jackson's Fox Sports 101.9 FM.